There is something deeply unsettling happening around you, and almost no one is talking about it honestly. The people you meet seem busier than ever, more connected than ever, more informed than ever, and yet somehow less wise, less capable of sitting with a hard question, less willing to endure the discomfort of being wrong. You have felt it, haven't you? That quiet, creeping suspicion that the world is getting louder and shallower at the same time. That something precious is being lost, not in some distant civilization, not in history books, but right now in real time, in the conversations you're having and the ones you're no longer able to have. What if that feeling isn't paranoia? What if it's the most lucid thing about you? To understand why societies become stupid, we first need to destroy a comfortable lie. Most people believe that intelligence is an individual trait, something locked inside a skull, something you either have or you don't. But human intelligence was never really individual. It was always at its deepest level a collective technology. We think together. We reason together. The great leaps of human civilization, language, writing, science, democracy, philosophy, none of them emerged from a single brilliant mind working in isolation. They emerged from the collision of minds, from the friction of disagreement, from the slow, painful, glorious process of one generation handing its hard-won understanding to the next. The ancient Greeks understood this. Socrates didn't write a single book. He walked through the marketplace and asked questions, uncomfortable questions, questions designed to expose the gap between what people believed and what they actually knew. He was annoying. He was dangerous. He was eventually killed for it, and in killing him, Athens made its first great intellectual mistake. It chose comfort over truth, consensus over inquiry. It chose, in a very real sense, to become a little more stupid that day. That same choice is being made every single day in the world you live in, and the mechanism is far more sophisticated than a cup of hemlock. Think about the information environment you inhabit. You wake up, and before your eyes have fully adjusted to the light, you are already consuming a feed tailored precisely to what you already believe, already like, already want to feel. You are not being informed. You are being confirmed. There is a profound difference. Information challenges, confirmation soothes, and the entire architecture of modern digital life is engineered with breathtaking precision to keep you soothed, because a soothed mind is a compliant mind. A soothed mind keeps scrolling. A soothed mind doesn't ask the uncomfortable questions that Socrates asked in the marketplace. The philosopher Neil Postman warned us about this decades before the smartphone existed. In his extraordinary book, he argued that when a culture becomes addicted to entertainment, when every piece of information must be packaged as spectacle, as outrage, as dopamine, then serious thought becomes not just difficult, but socially embarrassing. The person who slows down and says, "Wait, this is more complicated than it looks," becomes the awkward one in the room. The person who speaks in slogans and certainties becomes the confident one, the shareable one, the one who gets the likes. Slowly, almost invisibly, depth becomes a social liability. And here is where it gets genuinely frightening. This isn't happening only to individuals. It is happening to entire institutions. The universities that were built to protect inquiry are now protecting consensus. The journalism that was built to challenge power is now mostly performing for the already converted. The political systems that were built to aggregate wisdom are now rewarding whoever speaks most simply, most angrily, most tribally. The very structures that were designed to make collective intelligence possible are being quietly repurposed to make collective stupidity comfortable. But why? Why does this happen? Is there something in human nature that gravitates toward intellectual decay? If this question already resonates somewhere deep inside you, if you've looked around and felt this weight, then what you're about to hear next might change how you see everything. The psychologist Jonathan Haidt spent decades studying moral reasoning and arrived at a conclusion that most people find genuinely disturbing. He discovered that human beings almost never reason their way to their beliefs. Instead, they feel their way to their beliefs, fast, intuitive, tribal, and then use reasoning afterward, not to find the truth, but to justify what they already felt. We are not rational animals who sometimes get emotional. We are emotional animals who sometimes use rationality as a tool to dress up our prejudices in the language of logic. This is not a flaw in a few bad people. This is the default operating system of the human mind, and it means that in any society, at any time, the forces pulling toward intellectual laziness are immense. They are not external forces imposed by villains. They are internal forces, the gravitational pull of our own cognitive comfort, our own tribal loyalties, our own deep discomfort with uncertainty. What keeps those forces in check? Historically, the only thing that has ever reliably kept those forces in check is culture. A culture that values the examined life, a culture that treats changing your mind as a sign of strength, not weakness, a culture that makes space for the long, unglamorous, deeply unfashionable work of actually thinking. When that culture breaks down, the gravitational pull wins, and the society collectively grows less capable of navigating reality. Look at what happens when a society loses that culture. It doesn't become openly cruel overnight. It becomes, first, incurious. People stop asking why. They start asking only who, and who is to blame, who is on my side, who do I need to fear. The question, what is true, gets slowly replaced by the question, what is useful for my team? And once that substitution happens, once truth becomes a weapon rather than a destination, the society has crossed a line it rarely finds its way back across. History offers us devastating examples. Weimar Germany was not a society of stupid people. It was a society of increasingly incurious people, exhausted by complexity, hungry for simple answers, willing to trade the difficult freedom of thought for the intoxicating comfort of certainty. The Roman Empire did not fall because Romans became individually dull. It fell partly because Roman intellectual culture gradually hollowed out, because rhetoric replaced philosophy, because spectacle replaced civic engagement, because the citizens of the greatest civilization in the ancient world decided that bread and circuses were enough. You might be thinking, but we are different now. We have the internet. We have more access to knowledge than any human beings in history. Surely we are protected, and this is exactly where the deepest danger hides. Access to information and the capacity for wisdom are not the same thing. They may not even be correlated. In fact, there is a credible argument, made by some of the most serious thinkers alive today, that an excess of easily available information, without the cultural scaffolding to process it, actually accelerates intellectual decay rather than preventing it. When everything is available, nothing is weighted. When every voice is amplified equally, discernment becomes impossible. When you can find a source that confirms any belief, no matter how detached from reality, then the very concept of evidence loses its traction on the mind. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls this the burnout society, a civilization so saturated with stimulation, with positivity, with the relentless demand for performance and engagement, that the contemplative mind simply cannot survive in it. Deep thought requires silence. It requires boredom. It requires the willingness to sit with a question that doesn't resolve quickly. And we have built a world that wages war on all of those things, every minute of every day. But here is the secret that most conversations about this topic never reach. The stupidity of societies is not primarily an intellectual problem. It is a spiritual one. What I mean by that is this. At the root of collective intellectual decay is not a failure of education or information. It is a failure of courage. The courage to be uncertain, the courage to be wrong. The courage to stand in a room full of people who believe something passionately and say quietly, "I'm not sure that's right." Václav Havel, the Czech playwright who became a president, described this with extraordinary clarity. He said that the great enemy of truth in modern societies is not the dramatic lie of the tyrant. It is what he called living within the lie, the small, daily, almost invisible choices that ordinary people make to avoid the discomfort of truth. The choice not to say what you actually think at the dinner table. The choice to share the outrage post without reading the article. The choice to stay inside the informational bubble because leaving it feels lonely and dangerous. These small choices, multiplied across millions of people over years and decades, build the architecture of a stupid society, not with malice, with fatigue, with the very human, very understandable desire to belong. And this is the most important thing you can hold on to as you walk away from this conversation. Societies do not become stupid because of their worst citizens. They become stupid because of their good citizens, their tired citizens, their busy citizens, their citizens who mean well but have quietly, gradually, abdicated the exhausting responsibility of thinking clearly. The solution is not out there in some political movement or technological fix. It begins in the most intimate possible place, in the willingness of individual human beings to choose discomfort over comfort in the realm of their own minds. Read the book that challenges you. Sit with the argument that makes you angry long enough to understand why it makes you angry. Follow the thought to its uncomfortable conclusion instead of stopping where it starts to hurt. Talk to someone who sees the world differently, not to change their mind, but to genuinely interrogate your own. These are not grand gestures. They are small, daily acts of intellectual courage, and they are, in the deepest sense, acts of love. Love for the civilization you have inherited, love for the people who will inherit it from you. The Greek word for citizen was polites, from polis, the city, the community, the shared life. To be a citizen was not merely to live within a society, it was to be responsible for it, to participate in the difficult work of keeping it alive and thinking and honest. That responsibility has never been more urgent than it is right now, in this precise moment, when the forces of distraction and confirmation and tribal comfort are more powerful than they have ever been in human history. A society that stops thinking doesn't announce its decline. It entertains itself through it. It scrolls through it. It performs outrage about the wrong things while the important things go quietly unexamined. It mistakes noise for discourse and activity for thought. And one day, the people inside it look up and realize they no longer know how to have a conversation that might change something real, not because they have lost the capacity, but because they have simply forgotten to use it. You have not forgotten. The fact that you are here asking these questions, sitting with this discomfort, that itself is an act of resistance. Guard it, cultivate it, refuse to trade it for the ease of certainty or the warmth of the echo chamber. The examined life is not the most comfortable life, but it remains, as it has always been, the only life truly worth living. If this reached something real in you today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and stay on this journey, because the questions we're going to keep asking together are exactly the ones the world is trying to make us forget. Like this video if it made you think differently, and leave a comment below. What moment in your own life made you realize that being right was less important than being honest? I want to read every single one.